question. But if you are uncomfortable asking a specific question, Sheena does have some post-it notes, or if you've been taking notes and you give an extra piece of blank paper, then Sheena will collect it and I will read those questions. You're welcome to leave those questions anonymous. So we really are interested to hear what it is that you want to know, and certainly we encourage you to ask questions. We have people here from UCF, we have people from the city of Orlando, Orange County, state government. We have really covered such a wide swath of policymakers and officials who play important roles in this issue. So is there someone who would like to ask a question? Yes, please. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Hi. Normally years at UCF, I have supported no fewer than 5 of my homeless groups. So this is a topic that is very close to my heart. I've done over 1,000 pages of reading on this because this matters. And it turns out that our costs in housing, transportation, and food are all deeply linked by our land use. Now, one problem that we have in terms of our development and our use of land in the Tri-County region are what I call the two main enemies of the American people: parking lots and lawns. I know it sounds like, wait, we have a lot of enemies, I'm not sure why you're taking these two out. Let me be more specific. So when it comes to parking lots, sometimes this increases the cost of development by up to 18%. The biggest cap on housing density in the United States is because of the off-street parking requirements that are held in place on the county level. I've spoken with the administrators in Orange County, and they've said that they're not even interested in looking at changing the off-street parking requirements until after the vote for the 1-cent sales tax for our transportation system, because they believe that it's necessary for us to have a functioning transportation system that is able to get people from point A to point B more effectively before we get rid of the means of parking cars that people are already used to making use of. Some of the problems with that, though, is that, one, the reason everything is so spread out is because we have these parking lots. Two, you know what, I'm done droning about the parking lots. Let me just be very, very straight to the point. If we wait until 2020 to begin reconsidering our parking lot legislation on the county level, and if, God forbid, there's a major climate event or a market disaster that occurs in the meantime, and we have fewer than probably 2 or 3 years before we can even begin starting to alleviate the housing crisis, what are we going to do? It's like, what are my friends going to do when they're on the streets again? My friends are barely able to afford to live in Orlando. We graduate, and we feel like we're treated like logs, like we're being known just to be cut back down. We graduate with these degrees that are meaningful to us because there's a lot of knowledge that we spend years dedicating ourselves to learning. But half the time we're supporting each other through homelessness and starvation, and we're basically barely able to make it through our college experience without having to face destitution sometimes. And everywhere I go, it just seems like this isn't a priority. It just seems like the momentum of the status quo is so significant that I have more faith in the total disruption of our market and environment, forcing us to actually make a decision to do things. I have more faith in that than in the progressive method of making one change at a time. Because I no longer can see a path where we can actually make modern changes in our economic circumstances, like making use of our land for housing and food instead of parking lots and lawns, like making use of our land for anything, like making use of our land for generating renewable energies that allow us to cover the cost of operating these properties. I just don't see that, and I want to know, will you stand up, especially Commissioner Bonilla, will you stand up against off-street parking requirements and against the HOAs that hold in place the requirements that we grow these lawns instead of being able to grow our own food.
Commissioner, would you like to begin?
So I really feel you. I'm sorry?
And thank you for the question, sir.
Yes, thank you. I really feel you. Local government is really impactful on our everyday lives. And I think a lot of people go through their everyday lives not really understanding that and not understanding the connection between who they elect in the local elections to sitting in traffic, what they're paying for their rent, cost of living. Like every decision that we make really affects the everyday person. And a lot of people don't even know who their county commissioner is. When we have elections, they don't even vote far down that, they call down ballot. They don't go that far down to even vote sometimes, because they don't know who the people are down at the bottom. And they focus on the president, they focus on Congress, they focus on, no offense, state legislators. But your local government really has way more impact on your everyday life. And you seem to really understand that. But, the reason why I say that is because a lot of the decisions that have been made have caused the issues that we're in right now. They really have. When I was talking about the property taxes and because of the Great Recession, they needed more taxes, that decision, that trend of approving all these McMansions caused our housing crisis. And it's, when you said that, you don't have the faith in that one little step at a time, that's really gonna take like all the blocks to fall before someone really wakes up. I've actually been there. I was very optimistic when I first got on the board, thinking that I had colleagues with me who, at least the majority felt the same way I did. But still, decisions that were being made, I was voting no on. I didn't believe in them. I still do it today. Sometimes I'm the only no vote. And sometimes I feel like it's gonna take a real crisis before the status quo is changed. The status quo, like you said, really is strong. It's completely strong. It controls everything in our government, both at the local, state, and federal. And like you said, sometimes I think too, it's gonna take some really big crisis to happen before we start waking up.
Thank you.
Look at this. I'm not done, sorry. We have a housing crisis. We didn't start this until, I believe it was 2017, when things started really getting bad. And now we're waiting for things to, we have another task force now. And I'm all task forced out. I don't know about you guys, but I want some action. I'm tired of all the studies, all the talk. I'm ready for some action. But your parking, because you asked about that, it's like the chicken and the egg. We really do have a transportation crisis as well. And it took us to this point now that it's so bad that we're looking at the sales tax. And that was due to poor growth management, poor decisions. We're here where we're at because of all the bad decisions that were made. And until those decisions are corrected, unfortunately, like staff told you, we really can't take away the parking because we're car dependent because of the poor growth management. And until we correct that, we can't take away the parking. So it's like, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. We need to fix one before we can fix the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the panel who would like to respond before we go to the next question? Yes, please.
Let me try that. It's got a little more oomph. I know that I certainly hear your comments, and one of the things that I want to talk about from the local government side when you're trying to manage these processes, a lot of them are in place because that's what the citizens who've come forward have demanded. And you all know what a NIMBY is, not in my backyard. And I always say it's the people with the torches and pitchforks that turn out at council meetings. And I've seen it for affordable housing my whole career. People turn out they don't want that, they don't need that, put that over in some other part of town, whatever. But you see it for luxury housing, and we've had some real battles in Orlando where we've come in, where developers have come in with proposals for more density, which helps address some of those issues, whether it's affordable housing or market rate or luxury housing or whatever. And the demand, the people who tend to come out to protest don't want it, and they like the status quo, and they like their lawns, and in fact, they don't want anything else developed around it. They like it the way it is. They don't want the density. And one of the things that I would hope that some of the folks here who believe the way that you do, when you hear that those hearings are going on, you come to those council meetings and say, hey, this is a great idea because this does address the issues that are important to you. And it gives the elected folks somebody else in the room showing that there's support. You know, I've just seen so many projects shot down because there isn't that community outrage to come in and say exactly what you're saying tonight. And that's how you can get some of the things to move a little bit. We did approve accessory dwelling units. That's let's see, I guess we would call it an upzoning in the city where you can put an accessory dwelling unit in pretty much any area now. So many of our communities have huge areas that are just zoned R1s for single family houses, and those are very inefficient. So by doing that, that's a big help there where additional units can be built and be afforded. And I believe the county has just approved that as well. But that's something, as a result of the study, when that was approved, the city moved forward on that at that time. So we're making progress. But, you know, come out and speak your voice when you hear these hearings are going on. The news media are always happy to show those meetings. And when you see that, you know, call your representative and tell them how you feel about it. We need that support.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Our next question. Yes, please. What is your name? There's a microphone coming.
Hello, thankful for being here. My name is Bonilla, and I'm a senior studying human communications at UCF. So my major and many other majors moved to UCF downtown. My question is, how are we protecting the existing community in Paramore, Orlando's historically Black community, and one of the lowest income areas from gentrification?
Who would like to start? Please, Mr. Henry.
Thank you for your question, Melina. So I have a state government perspective, but really it's unfortunate to see what's happening and has happened with gentrification on the west side of town in particular. I know that recently a decision was made by the city that there was a property that housed lots and lots and lots of families that was specifically for low-income renters that they are going to be getting rid of, and those folks are displaced, and we don't have substantial affordable housing properties and units for them to then move into after they've been displaced. So that's more of a city question and a city dialogue, but I know that I'm really, really concerned about that particular issue, and I know that other panelists are as well that want to answer this.
Mr. Henry.
I figured it would end up down here, and that's great. That's a very important question to us at the city, and the displacement of the folks who've been living in these neighborhoods for years is of great concern to us at the city, and we have several strategies that we try to implement to deal with that. We have a rehabilitation program which helps homeowners to rehabilitate their houses so that keeps them viable. But a real concern is the loss of rental stock, because something like 90% of the houses and apartment units in Paramore are rental. There's not a lot of homeowners there to start with. And we've been working actually with UCF and the Central Florida Foundation, and that we've been creating different mechanisms to buy existing rentals that are owned by investment owners. And what we're doing right now, we're working on about 83 units. It's spread out in 44 different buildings, so it's a lot of single-family houses and duplexes. There's one small apartment complex, and we're it was a consortium of 3 different groups that have purchased those properties, and then the city is assisting in the renovation so that these units are all being brought up to code. There'd be proper air conditioning and heating systems are being installed instead of window units and such. The OUC is working with us to make sure they're properly insulated, and the existing tenants, as long as they're meeting the terms of their lease. You know, I won't say nobody is being forced out. I mean, you have to be a good tenant and you have to pay your rent. But the intention was all those existing tenants can stay, and that the rent increases are limited. Don't hold me to it. I think it's like no more than 10% over 10 years. And we're seeing, 10% a year rent increases in a lot of these places that aren't this way. This is just one initiative that we've started. We have a couple of new low-income housing tax credit projects coming online. We had a ribbon cutting for one on South Paramore this afternoon, Paramore Oaks. And it's just an incredible amount of work. I could probably write a pretty good book about that project because that started 20 years ago. And we cut the ribbon today on like 110 new units, which most are affordable. There's some permanent supportive housing units that'll be there. So those are designed to help the residents in that area. I don't know if you're talking about the Housing Authority and their announcements. Yeah, we're working with them too. That you're not going to see somebody come through and hold those units and kick everybody out. It's going to be a long process. Really, a lot of our public housing units here need to be redeveloped. And I've seen the assessments of those buildings. It is cheaper to rebuild than to rehabilitate a lot of those. When you look through and bring buildings up to today's safety standards, get rid of the termites, get rid of the lead paint, all those issues. So we do have strategies that we're working on that. I mean, it is at the top of the list. We want to minimize the displacement in whether it's Paramore or any of our affordable neighborhoods. We have things going on in various parts of town. So I hope that answers that.
Excellent, thank you so much. I wanted to just pay attention to different sides of the room. Sir, what is your name, please?
My name is Gene Siddell. I'm actually on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee at the Orlando Regional Realtor Association. I'm a broker and investor myself, and I actually do accept housing choice voucher programs. 90% of what I have in my portfolio is housing choice voucher tenants. And you guys talk about the 3 to 5 mile radius around the university, and one of the challenges as an investor that keeps us out of that bubble is the sheer price of property near the university. Quite frankly, the business model sort of just breaks down when you get closer to the university. So my question is, can there exist any type of grants or incentive programs for investors who have a proven track record of accepting some of these housing choice voucher programs and can dedicate them back to the mission of affordable housing and not just come in and make profit, but you know, for those who actually do accept these types of vouchers, sort of getting within that 3 to 5 mile radius bubble, can there exist some type of win-win situation for the student body and the investor alike is my main question.
Who'd like to begin the response? Commissioner.
All right, so when it comes to funding, the county doesn't really have any grants for that type of project, but it does sound like a great idea. Have you been following the Housing for All Task Force? No? Okay. Well, they're at the end of what they're doing. They're coming up with some reports, but something like that would have been a great idea for that task force because they're supposed to be coming up with some solutions to our issues and some creative solutions. But around close to the university, a lot of the properties are really expensive. And a lot of developers that are coming in are looking to do luxury student housing. They're not looking to do any affordable student housing, and they really can't because, like what I said before, there really is no funding for student housing for the federal government or the state government. It's not allowed. So it's a very difficult situation. And I was trying to, I'm part of this committee at the National Association of Counties. That we look at affordable housing, and I was trying to get other county commissioners to work with me on getting more funding for students, and they weren't going for it. And the reason why was because they felt that would take, we've already limited on funds, and that would take funds away from families that need affordable housing. And some of the reasons why we have restrictions on affordable housing resources for students is because they're afraid that students who have wealthy parents may be taking advantage of these programs, or students who really, you know, who can live with their parents or choosing to live outside. And there's just a bunch of different reasons that they were coming up with and why they have these restrictions. So it is a difficult problem that we have with specifically students and needing affordable housing, which is why I said that's why we really need the universities to build more dorms to solve that issue.
Commissioner Bonilla is right about the need for universities to build dorms because the interest of the university is not the same interest as a developer. The interest of the developer is to make money and to profit off of these complexes that are being built. That is not the mission of the university when they're building dorms. They are obviously building units to be affordable housing for students, not with the incentive of making a profit off of those students, but to have more students enrolled on campus and being successful academically, because if they're not, obviously that doesn't do a lot for the reputation of the school, but they can also lose state and federal dollars when students don't complete the programs that they're enrolled in. So there's an unspoken or many times spoken incentive for the universities to provide affordable housing for students. One of my struggles, and this is important for everyone in the room to kind of understand, the second we start talking about affordable housing, we hear from developers, and this is not to question, you know, what you are asking about when it comes to the business incentive for developers to build affordable student housing, but the incentive part is about asking government to give bonuses, for example, or subsidize through offering taxpayer resources to those developers to build affordable housing. I'm always going to advocate for opportunities for us to not use incentives in the form of money, of taxpayer money, to give to for-profit developers to come and create student housing. If anything, if incentives are going to be offered, they need to be offered under the condition that a minimum number of units in that housing is offered to low-income students, that as a requirement, they are also, for example, offering short-term leases, so you're not stuck in a 6-month or a 1-year lease to be able to enter a property. And unfortunately, what happened this year in Tallahassee, I mentioned this briefly when I gave my opening remarks. They passed House Bill 7103, which basically says that any associated costs to the developer in the form of impact fees, which are charged on a regular basis by school boards and local governments, because if you're going to build a big apartment complex, especially if it's going up high, there's a cost associated with building more roads, building more infrastructure around that. You have to plan that area, and that costs taxpayer money. So governments charge impact fees. The developers want us to not charge them impact fees, but then it comes down to, okay, well, who's gonna pay for all of this when all these people come into these new developments? The legislature said that any incentives that are offered by local governments, if they're gonna happen, they basically have to be offset by bonuses. Well, it's bonuses are being they're being offered if you are going to charge impact fees. I want to make sure that I'm really clear on what I'm saying. Excuse me. I want to be clear. 7103 says that if you're going to charge the full impact fees, you have to offset it with bonuses to the developers, and you have to offset it with waived fees. That doesn't work. It ties the hands of local government. It ties the hands of folks like Commissioner Bonilla, who are looking for ways to create smart development in areas, offer affordable housing without having to give away the store, so to speak, in incentives to developers. So that's a big part of this conversation here that always comes up in affordable housing, incentives for developers, which really makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't feel like we should have to incentivize them with taxpayer resources. But that's what comes up every time we have a lot of these discussions, for sure.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Hi, everybody.
There's a mic right behind you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Frey, and I'm a graduate student here at the University of Central Florida. I'm getting my master's in public administration. So this topic is extremely important to me, and I just want to bring some more of a personal and realness to this topic. And I really hope that the SDS leaders in here are seriously listening, because this is a crisis, and I'm a GA here as well. I work here. So I always hear retention. We want our students to stay engaged, right? We want to make sure they graduate on 4 years. So let's put them in housing, get them engaged, give them a degree, they're off, let's do it again for the next class. UCF opened up a downtown campus. I am a downtown student. That's where my program moved to. Rent for a 4-4 is $1,210, and you're paying $110 to park every month. So that puts me at $1,300. That's not including car note, gas, food, just to go out with my friends to the movie. That's not including any of that. That's just the bare necessities. If we're worried about retention rate, keeping our students on campus, affordable housing in dorms, we move our students downtown, such as me. There's no dining hall. It's just a Subway that just opened and a Dunkin' Donuts. This is not to bash UCF, but this is true. This is what downtown looks like. It's not finished being built. I'm not saying this was a bad project. I love being downtown, but you have pushed a lot of students downtown that don't have the basic necessities. If you don't have a car and you're a freshman that lives downtown, how will you get food? You have to use Uber, Lyft, from a job you have, maybe work study. That's here at the main campus. They take a shuttle to go to the main campus and then come back. That's the realness of the student. But now we're downtown, so we're far away from everybody else. So to live somewhat comfortably in 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom, I'm paying $1,300 and to park my car in the garage to say I'm going downtown. If we're worried about retention and keeping our students here to graduate 4 years, how, when I'm worried about how am I gonna live? If I'm too scared to finish my master's degree so I can make maybe $50,000, $60,000 at most, and I still can't afford that to live in Florida, then there's a problem. Is it retention, or our students, how are they doing mentally, emotionally, and can they even afford to live, which we can't. That is the realness at downtown campus. So my question to the panelists if you guys can answer. A lot of you, I know you guys talked about the Affordable Trust Fund that's going on in Tallahassee. Is there any policies in place to hold our legislators accountable? That they're, they're taking this money and putting it into other projects and they're doing all these other things. How are we gonna hold them accountable to our affordable housing crisis? This is a crisis right now, and I know we all feel it, we all see it, but if it's not impacting them, why do they care, right? It's only gonna hurt when we're knocking on doors, when we have pitchforks, when people can't afford, when students are dropping out, and now UCF is scrambling, oh wait, our students are leaving, what's gonna happen? It's a lot of a political game for this retention rate. So UCF can get more money from Tallahassee, and it's a lot of, we want them to hurry up and get out of here, and not, can they even live? I'm not saying this because I don't love UCF, I do, but it's like, you have to call a spade a spade. This is what's happening, this is real, and how are we gonna hold our legislators accountable? How are we gonna hold UCF accountable when a lot of students downtown are struggling? And I don't think that has been mentioned just because it's so new, it's only been open 3 months, but this is a topic that should be talked about, especially as a graduate student who feels this way, not even a freshman. It is very heartbreaking to see what they go through, what I go through, and I have to have 2 GA jobs just to barely survive, and that's unfortunate.
Thank you very much. Who would like to begin? Vice President Ray?
Thank you for that question and comment that you made. You're correct. It is a challenge. Downtown housing and the surrounding area there is expensive. We are concerned about student development, retention, and all of the things that you said. This is why we're here. What I'd like to offer to you, I will give you my card, and I want you to call, or I will contact you to try to assist you in finding more reasonable housing downtown. This is what my office does. I can't deal with the politics of that. We have other folks here to do that. But I'm concerned about the retention and the student development aspect that you raised. And I will work with you and others to try to assist in that area. Okay? All right. So meet me after this. I'll give you my card. I'll get information from you so I can try to assist you. Okay? That's politics aside. This is education. This is development. Okay. All right.
I wanted to add to that. Thank you for sharing with us your story. You mentioned that you were a graduate assistant, right? Okay, so that's a really important issue. I serve on 2 committees in Tallahassee. I serve on the House Higher Education Appropriations Committee, but I also serve on the Higher Education and Career Readiness Subcommittee. And what has been brought to my attention several times by a group called the United Faculty of Florida, which is essentially the union for many graduate assistants and also faculty at our various state universities, is the issue of the fact that graduate assistants, for the most part, are living in poverty. When they are putting in the research, the studying, the assisting with the development of curriculum, and they are paid a stipend, but that doesn't go anywhere near enough to be able to cover living expenses. And also there are still pretty much all of the same fees, tuition fees, associated with undergraduates for graduate assistants. There is one part of the solution to that, which I have talked about a few times, and that is mandating through the state that a certain number of fee waivers should be mandated for graduate assistants in particular, to offset the fact that we know that you are being paid through stipends below living wages, and that should be able to help connect some of the dots and help pay some of the bills if we mandate that graduate assistants be offered fee waivers for a number of fees related to your work at the university. So that's a dialogue that we're having for sure.
Is there anyone else on the panel who would like to respond? Is there anyone from this side of the room with a question? Thank you. Yes.
I just want to add that during that conversation that you had regarding the fee waivers, if you could possibly consider lowering or just waiving some of the on-campus fees for those who are receiving Pell Grants. Having been a Pell Grant recipient, I could not afford to live on campus. And for the housing that I often found away from campus, a third of the cost, I also had to have usually one full-time job or 2 part-time jobs to cover those costs. We all know that parking on all of our Florida campuses is a struggle. And when you are working full-time, it is extremely hard to get on and off campus to and from a place that might be a half hour away in a reasonable time. And so I would just ask if you could include us in the conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Brooke. You know, the reality is that what's often very misleading is Florida rightfully brags, our state university system rightfully brags that in our state, tuition has been frozen in place for many years. And that is a good thing, but it is very misleading because while tuition has been frozen in the state for many years, fees have not been frozen. Fees continue to increase related to your enrollment at our state universities. The cost of living continues to increase. The availability of affordable housing continues to decrease. And of course, wages are stagnant in the state of Florida. So we understand that all of these issues interact with each other, and they all need to be considered as part of the solution.
Yes, please. There's a microphone coming your way.
Hello, my name is Joshi for Santiago. I'm here representing the organization Alianza for Progress. And before me joining Alianza, I used to work in education in middle schools, specifically in low-income middle schools. And I had students who literally lived with friends. So I would, be with their parents, speaking to them. And the parents would tell me, you don't know the last time I've slept in a bed. My kids are with our friends, and my husband and I are in the car. So this is an issue not only for college kids, this is like kindergarteners are going through a lot of these really catastrophic things that are happening with housing. I understand there was a renter's bill, and I just wanted to know a little bit about it, and the people who probably oppose this bill should be shown so that everyone understands that we have something in place and there are people voting against this that will help so many get affordable housing. So that's my question specifically to Carlos, Representative Carlos.
Thank you, Joshi. And I appreciate the work that Alianza for Progress has done around addressing the affordable housing crisis. The question was about renters' rights legislation. So last year I filed a comprehensive renters' rights bill that actually I will be reintroducing